On the night Nala was born, the sky turned blood red. The elders said the ancestors were choosing the child who would change the fate of an entire kingdom.
The child of prophecy.
But no one imagined that the poor orphan they would one day reject was destined to become the king's seventh wife. The old prophet looked at the newborn child and trembled. He had seen many births in his lifetime, but never one like this. The ancestors had revealed a future that would shake the kingdom to its very foundation. "Listen carefully," he said, raising his ancient staff. "This little girl will one day decide the fate of Zambala. The day she becomes the king's seventh wife, the kingdom will either know everlasting peace or be consumed by darkness." The frightened parents looked at one another in disbelief. Before they could ask another question, a bolt of lightning struck outside the hut and the prophet mysteriously disappeared into the storm. 7 years passed, and Nala grew into a cheerful little girl whose laughter filled her parents' home with joy. But happiness never stays forever. A deadly sickness swept across Zambala, taking the lives of many innocent people. Within days, Nala lost the only 2 people who had ever loved her without condition. At just 7 years old, she became an orphan. As the villagers lowered her parents into the earth, little Nala stood alone, unaware that her greatest suffering was only just beginning. After the burial, Nala had nowhere else to go. The village elders asked her mother's older sister, Makena, to take the little girl into her home. Standing beside Makena was her only daughter, Zuri, a girl the same age as Nala. Unlike Nala, Zuri wore fine clothes, shiny beads, and walked with confidence of someone who had never known hunger. Years passed, but nothing changed for Nala. She remained a servant in her aunt's house, while Zuri was treated like royalty. Makena had only one dream: to see her daughter become the king's 7th wife. She believed the crown already belonged to Zuri. She had no idea that the ancestors had chosen someone else. As the years passed, a terrible darkness settled over Zambala. The rain stopped, rivers dried up, crops withered, and hunger spread across the kingdom. No matter what the king tried, the suffering only grew worse. With his people on the edge of despair, King Jabari made one final decision. He summoned the oldest prophet in the land, hoping the ancestors would reveal a way to save the kingdom. King Jabari could no longer watch his people suffer. He laid aside his pride and journeyed to the sacred grove, where the oldest prophet had lived in seclusion for many years. The king knelt before the ancient seer and pleaded, "Tell me, what must I do to save my kingdom?" The old prophet closed his eyes and listened to the voices of the ancestors. When he finally spoke, his words silenced the entire kingdom. 15 years later, the little orphan everyone once ignored had grown into a young woman. Nala was now 18 years old. Though years of hardship had left her clothes worn and her hands rough from endless work, her kindness remained untouched. While Makena dreamt of a royal future for Zuri, Nala expected nothing more than another day of labor. But beyond their village, a disaster was unfolding. The rains no longer fell, rivers dried up, crops withered, and hunger spread across the kingdom. No sacrifice, no prayer, and no decree from the king could stop the suffering. With hope fading, King Jabari turned to the only one who might know the will of the ancestors. As Nala made her way home, the sound of royal drums echoed across the village. Everyone stopped what they were doing. The king had issued an urgent decree. A royal messenger proclaimed, "By the order of His Majesty, King Jabari, every unmarried young woman of age in the Kingdom of Zambala must appear before the royal palace in 3 days. The ancestors have chosen the king's 7th wife, and the chosen one shall be revealed before the entire kingdom." The village erupted with excitement. Makena smiled with confidence, certain that this day had come. Nala lowered her eyes and quietly continued walking. She never imagined that the ancestors' choice was already following her home. The moment they returned home, Makena could hardly explain her excitement. For years, she had believed this day would come. "I told you this was your destiny," she said, proudly as she looked at Zuri. "In 3 days, you will stand before the king and you will return as his queen." The two celebrated, while Nala quietly continued her chores, unnoticed and uninvited. To Makena, Nala was nothing more than a servant. She never imagined that the ancestors had chosen the very girl she had spent years trying to break. As preparations filled the village, every family looked forward to the royal gathering. But inside Makena's home, one name was never mentioned. "You are not going anywhere," Makena said coldly to Nala. "The king is looking for a queen, not a servant. Stay here and finish your work while Zuri claims the future she deserves." Nala lowered her head and quietly obeyed. She never questioned Makena's decision because she had never imagined a different life for herself. But destiny does not ask for permission. The following morning, the royal drums echoed across Zambala. The people gathered, expecting another announcement from the palace. A royal messenger unrolled a second scroll and spoke with a commanding voice. "By the order of the ancient prophet, no unmarried young woman of age shall be left behind. Every eligible young woman in the Kingdom of Zambala must appear before the ancestors. Anyone who disobeys this sacred command will answer to the crown." Makena's smile disappeared. For the first time, she realized she had no choice but to take Nala with them. The day of the royal gathering finally arrived. From every corner of Zambala, young women made their way to the palace, each hoping destiny would smile upon them. With no way to disobey the prophet's command, Makena reluctantly allowed Nala to join them. "Walk behind us," she warned. "Do not speak. Do not embarrass this family." Nala lowered her head and quietly obeyed. She never dreamt of becoming a queen. She only wished for the day to end so she could return to the life she had always known. By midday, the palace courtyard was filled with hopeful faces. Daughters of chiefs, wealthy merchants, respected elders, and ordinary villagers all stood side by side, waiting for the ancestors' decision. Some whispered silent prayers, others smiled with quiet confidence. Among them stood Nala, unnoticed by almost everyone. Then the palace gates slowly opened. The ancient prophet stepped forward. Without saying a single word, he began to walk through the crowd. The prophet moved slowly through the crowd. One by one, he looked into the face of every young woman standing before him. Whenever he passed someone, disappointed whispers spread through the courtyard. He walked past the daughters of chiefs. He walked past the daughters of wealthy merchants. Then he stopped before Zuri. Makena held her breath. Zuri smiled, convinced the moment she had dreamt of had finally arrived. But after a long silence, the prophet continued walking. The entire courtyard fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. The entire palace stood frozen in disbelief. Then the silence was shattered. "Impossible!" voices cried from every corner of the courtyard. "She is only a poor orphan. There must be a mistake." Makena could not believe what she had heard. Zuri stared at Nala, unable to accept that the dream she had cherished for years had slipped away in a single moment. Even King Jabarin looked toward the prophet, searching for another answer. But the old prophet never looked away from Nala. "The ancestors do not make mistakes," he said. The cries of the crowd grew louder. "Tell us why," one elder shouted. "How can a poor orphan become our queen?" The old prophet slowly lifted his staff and silence returned to the courtyard. The ancestors did not choose wealth. They did not choose beauty. They did not choose power. They chose a heart that remained pure despite years of suffering. From this day forward, no one shall stand against the will of the ancestors. No one dared to speak again. Before the setting of the sun, the royal wedding began. Though many questioned the ancestors' choice, no one dared challenge their will. In a ceremony witnessed by the entire kingdom, the poor orphan became King Jabari's seventh wife. As Nala stepped into the palace as queen, dark eyes watched her with hatred. Not everyone had accepted the ancestors' decision. The following morning, Queen Nala began her new life in the palace. She greeted everyone with kindness, even those who refused to greet her in return. But while Nala sought peace, her enemies prepared their first trap. That same day, one of the king's most precious royal treasures mysteriously disappeared. Before sunset, the palace guards were standing at Queen Nala's door. The guards searched Queen Nala's chamber from corner to corner. Every eye watched in silence. Then one of the guards reached beneath her bed. There it was, the king's missing royal necklace. A gasp swept through the palace. "Arrest her!" someone shouted. Nala stood frozen. "I did not take it," she whispered. But no one was willing to believe the words of a poor orphan who had become queen. Just as the guards stepped forward, a powerful wind swept through the royal chamber. The palace doors burst open, the oil lamps flickered wildly, and a deep silence fell over everyone. The old prophet entered. "Stop," he commanded. "No innocent soul shall be condemned while the ancestors still watch over this kingdom." The prophet struck the floor with his staff. "The truth will reveal itself." The prophet looked across the chamber. "The ancestors do not accuse the innocent," he said. He raised his staff towards the royal necklace. Suddenly, a brilliant golden light surrounded it. The necklace slowly rose into the air. Before the eyes of the entire palace, it drifted away from Queen Nala and stopped before the leader of the 6 queens. The chamber fell silent. "The ancestors have spoken," the prophet declared. "The true betrayer stands before you." The guilty queen confessed before the entire royal court. Her plot against Queen Nala had failed. King Jabari ordered justice to be carried out, and peace was restored within the palace. As the prophet lifted his staff towards the heavens, dark clouds gathered over Zambala for the first time in many months. Then the rain began to fall. The people danced with joy as the rivers filled again, the fields turned green, and hope returned to the kingdom. Those who once mocked the poor orphan now bowed before their queen. But Queen Nala chose mercy over revenge. A heart filled with hatred can never build a peaceful kingdom, she said. From that day forward, Queen Nala ruled with wisdom, compassion, and justice, and her name was remembered for generations as the queen chosen by the ancestors. Remember this: never judge a person by poverty, appearance, or the opinions of others. Sometimes the one the world rejects is the very one destined to change it. If you enjoyed this story, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Every like, every comment, and every new subscriber helps us bring more unforgettable African folktales to life. We're on an exciting journey to reach our first 1,000 subscribers, and we'd love for you to be part of it. So, if you haven't subscribed yet, click the subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next story. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next African folktale.